Jan Puman Veda Vidhitsitam Yad Vijigyashaya Yukta Muhyanti Kavayopihi Nahi Asya Karhi Chitrajan Puman Veda Vidhitsitam Yad Vijigyashaya Yukta Muhyanti Kavayopihi Nahi Asya Karhi Chitrajan Puman Veda Vidhitsitam Yat Vijigyasaya Yukta Muhyanti Kavayopihi Nahi Asya Karhi Chitrajan Puman Veda Vidhitsitam Yat Vijigyasaya Yukta Muhyanti Kavayopihi Nahi Asya Karhi Chitrajan Puman Veda Vidhitsitam Yat Vijigyashaya Yukta Muhyanti Kavayopihi Nahi Asya Karhi Chitrajan Puman Veda Vidhitsitam Yat Vijigyashaya Yukta Muhyanti Kavayopihi Nahi Asya Karhi Chitrajan Puman Veda Vidhitsitam Yat Vijigyashaya Yukta Muhyanti Kavayopihi. Synonyms: Na, never. He, certainly. Asya, his. Karhichit, whatsoever. Rajan, O king. Puman, anyone. Veda, knows. Vidhitsitam, plan. Yat, which. Vijigyashaya, with exhaustive inquiries. Yuktaha, being engaged. Muhyanti, bewildered. Kavayaha, great philosophers. Api, even. He, certainly. O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord, Sri Krishna, even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively. They are bewildered. Translation with repetition. O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord, Sri Krishna, even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively. They are bewildered. Purport. The bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhishthir over his past sinful acts and the resultant sufferings, etc., is completely negated by the great authority Bhishma, one of the 12 authorized persons. Bhishma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhishthir that since time immemorial, no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? It is useless also to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. The best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. The sufferings of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhishma Deva was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhishthira on the throne although he himself fought against him. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhishma Deva was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. Thus ends a wonderful transcendental Bhakti Vedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we continue this extraordinary series of verses in which Bhishma Deva is trying to explain to Yudhishthir that he should not feel morose, that he has killed so many persons, and he is providing context about how the mysterious ways of the universe works, how the mysterious plans of the Lords are working. Whenever there is a series of such verses, and there are many such series in Bhagavatam, it becomes more enjoyable because easier to maintain context. Sometimes if every verse is very, very different, we all forget what we heard last week. But now we have been hearing a series of verses, so you have a chance of having some continuity and remembering what we have heard previously. So today's verse, the purport is amazing purport. But we just look at the verse one more time. Nahi asya karhi chitrajan puman veda vidhitsitam yad vigyashaya yukta muhyanti kavayo apihi. The word he certainly comes twice. Nahi, certainly. There is just no way that anyone can know about the plan of the Lord. O King, no one can know the plan of the Lord. Nahi asya karhi chitrajan puman veda vidhitsitam. Vidhitsitam is translated as the plan. Veda is to know. And there is certainly no way for anyone to know what the plan of the Lord is. And what kind of attempt is being referred to here is not just a casual, maybe it's talking to somebody on the road or something, or looking at some quick forward. This is about deep inquiries by the sages. Yat vigyashaya yuktaha. That is, if somebody is taking as their primary occupation, let me find out what is the plan of the Lord. Let me try to figure out. Let me understand. So he did this 100 years back. He did this 500 years back. He did this 3,000 years back. Let me try to study why he is doing this. No, cannot be found out. Yad vigyashaya yukta muhyanti kavayo apihi. The sages who are dedicated to figuring out what is happening in this universe. Why does it rain sometimes? Why does it not rain sometimes? Why is there famine sometimes? Why some people are suffering, some people are not suffering? By looking at the external symptoms of what is happening in the universe, if somebody is trying to figure out what is the plan behind this whole universe, it's bewildering. So that is what this, and that is being said with great certainty twice. The word he is appearing twice. So that is in the verse itself. And if you look at the purport, it is full of keywords and phrases. At first, when you read it, it just seems like a collection of sentences, but you just read a little bit closely, you'll find so many phrases and keywords, each of which is a subject for research of what does Prabhupada say in context of these keywords and phrases. If you see, I have tried to highlight some of these phrases. Bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhishthir, past sinful acts, resultant sufferings, great authority Bhishma. And I try to make them into bullets. And there are all these bullets, any of which could be a topic for just this one verse that we are discussing today. 12 authorized persons. That can be a discussion on by itself, and you all know there are 12 authorized persons. Who are they, and what's the position of Bhishma? Such demigods as Shiva and Brahma. So first of all, people do not know that Shiva and Brahma are counted as demigods. They often think that there are that there are many gods. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, they are all gods. Ganesha, Kartikeya, and innumerable other deities, they are all gods. They are all gods. But actually it is not so. There is one God and there are many demigods. So demigods like Lord Shiva and Brahma is being referred to here. Real plan of the Lord, that itself is a keyword to understand what is meant by real plan of the Lord. Exhaustive philosophical inquiries. Then the punchline, the best policy. This verse, the purport is talking about something called the best policy. What should be the best policy? What should be our best policy in life? It's a very generic term, the best policy, and you'll see this phrase being repeated in many of Prabhupada's purports, the best policy. Orders of the Lord. That's another keyword that is there in today's purport. Orders of the Lord. What are the orders of the Lord? That's also something that is repeated many, many times. Without argument. Abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. So that's another qualifier that's been added in today's purport. Abiding by the orders of the Lord. But not just abiding, without argument, without resentment. Oh, I'm forced to do this. Because we are all forced to abide by the orders of the Lord, actually. Whether we like it or not, we are abiding by the orders of the Lord. But question is, are we doing it willingly or unwillingly? Are we doing it happily or with arguments? If we just reflect upon it, we are not really embracing the plan that the Lord has for us. We have many other counter points about why this is the way it is. Maybe a better way would have been more suitable for me. And then we spend a lot of our life trying to adjust the plan of the Lord to what we think the plan should have been. But none of that works because, of course, the plan of the Lord is the plan. It cannot be changed. So we ultimately follow the plan of the Lord, but with argument and not with happiness. And so that leads to a life of battle, constantly swimming against the tide and hoping for that which cannot be hoped for. So even the phrase without argument is a very special phrase that we should reflect upon. Sufferings of the Pandavas, kingdom of virtue. And that virtue has been used 3 times in the purport today. Kingdom of virtue, conquest of virtue, and triumph of virtue. So the Lord's plan here is being described by Prabhupada as the one to establish kingdom of virtue. And then he also says conquest of virtue. The Lord wanted to see the conquest of virtue. And he wanted to see the triumph of virtue. So conquest, triumph, followed by the kingdom. Right? So first there's a conquest. Then there is a triumph, which means victory. And then establishment of the kingdom. So this being the plan of the Lord, he does not want to see even a great personality like Bhishma Deva to be on the winning side, because he is on the wrong side, he must lose. And then there is a phrase, vice cannot conquer virtue. By itself. This phrase stands by itself. Vice cannot conquer virtue. And Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, those who do good are never overcome by evil. Will of the Lord, a fighter like Bhishma in the wrong side. So let us explore 1 or 2 of these. It's not possible for us to really explore all of them, but let's just look at a couple of these points here. So these points, if you were to classify them into 3 categories, some of these words, they come under the category, what is the plan of the Lord? Like we just talked about, right? Kingdom of virtue, conquest of virtue. And then there is, this plan has some qualities. What are the qualities of the plan? Nobody can figure out what it is. Nobody can understand the plan. No one could ascertain. That is the key word that Prabhupada has used today. And he's describing the plan of the Lord. Nobody could understand it. Even such demigods as Brahma and Shiva could not understand, nor could exhaustive philosophical inquiries by great sages could not understand the plan. So there is a plan, but nobody could understand the plan. And now Bhishma is explaining to Yudhishthira. There are several things that he's talking about. What are the things that he's talking about? He's talking about past sinful acts, past misdeeds. And these are all, of course, Prabhupada's purports, where he's paraphrasing Bhishma Deva. He's saying that Prabhupada is paraphrasing Bhishma here, and he's saying Bhishma wanted to explain that the sufferings of Pandavas are not because of their past misdeeds. It's not that they have done something wrong and they're suffering because of that. Their suffering is actually because it's a part of the plan of the Lord. So as part of the plan of the Lord, there must be the establishment of a kingdom of virtue. And as part of that, if you want to establish a kingdom of virtue, then the opposite party must be killed. And in that process, the Pandavas are participating in that plan without argument. They're abiding by the orders of the Lord. And in that process, they're accepting some temporary sufferings. So this is what Bhishma Deva also wants to impress upon Pandavas, that don't think that it's your sinful activity that you have killed all these people, because Yudhishthira Maharaj is very morose. Right? He's bewildered that so many people died on my account just because I wanted to become the king. Just to make me the king. Look at these millions of soldiers who have been killed. So Bhishma Deva is saying, no, it's not like that. It is the will of the Lord. And all the sufferings that you have undergone, because you have so far spoken about various kinds of sufferings that Pandavas had to undergo. And all those sufferings, which you have all accepted temporarily, they're not because of your past karma. That's the will of the Lord. But here there is also a message from Prabhupada specifically. And Prabhupada is saying, he's sandwiching, like he often does, the beginning and in the end, punchlines. And if you see this today's purport, he's talking about the great authority Bhishma. He first establishes the greatness of Bhishma in the purport. He's one of the 12 Mahajanas. But then he ends the purport by saying that Bhishma Deva was a great devotee of the Lord. But he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord. Why? Because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. That even someone like Bhishma, such a great devotee, one of the 12 recognized Mahajanas, great authorities, even such a person, if he goes to the wrong side and starts fighting on the side of that which is not righteous, then what happens? That cannot win. Cannot win. So the Lord wanted to show that. And Prabhupada is explaining to us that this is the real context here, that if somebody chooses the wrong side, they cannot win. So by the example of Bhishma, the Lord here is demonstrating a very, very big principle, that there is such a thing as a right side and a wrong side. And if, however great a personality may be, if you go on the wrong side, then cannot win. But if you're on the right side, then that's a winning side. So what is the right side and wrong side? So before we go into the details of this, let us look at this one purport in which Vidura is asking Uddhava to explain the pastimes of the Lord, of Lord Krishna. So Vidura goes on pilgrimage, and then there he meets Uddhava, and he asks Uddhava. So first of all, Uddhava is just absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna as he's trying to recollect the pastimes of Krishna. And he relates the entire pastime, the life of Lord Krishna, in just a few verses. Very interesting set of verses. And one of those verses, he explains what happens when Krishna sees Duryodhana lying on the battlefield. Now, this is not a scene that you might be aware of, but from Uddhava's statement, you can understand that such a scene was there. That there is battlefield, and of course, Krishna was present when Duryodhana was defeated by Bhima, And, um, and Krishna himself inspired Bhima to break the rules of the duel using the mace, where a person is ordinarily not supposed to hit a blow below the waist. But in this instance, Krishna inspired Bhima to actually break that rule and kill Duryodhana. But what happens after that? So when Duryodhana is lying on the battlefield with fatally injured, but not yet dead, and many of his associates are also lying around like that, all his associates, all the Kauravas, brothers, and all his allies, they're all lying. Krishna has actually seen that scene where Duryodhana is lying down, and he was not very pleased with that. He's not very happy to see Duryodhana like that. Although he himself has inspired Bhima to break Duryodhana's waist, but it's not that he was very happy to see Duryodhana lying down like that. And that is there in this purport, explanation for that. And the purport says, the fall of Duryodhana, the leading son of Dhritarashtra, was not at all pleasing to the Lord. Although he means Krishna, was on the side of Arjuna, and it was he who advised Bhima how to break the thighs of Duryodhana while the fighting was going on. The Lord is constrained to award punishment upon the wrongdoer. But he's not too happy. He's not happy to award such punishments. Because living entities are originally his parts and parcels. He is harder than the thunderbolt for the wrongdoer and softer than the rose for the faithful. The wrongdoer is misled by bad associates and by ill advice, which is against the established principles of the Lord's order, and thus he becomes subject to punishment. The surest path to happiness is to live by the principles laid down by the Lord and not disobey his established laws, which are enacted in the Vedas and the Puranas for the forgetful living entities. So there is a path which is the right path, and there is a path which is the wrong path. And how is it that people take to this wrong path? That is given here by Prabhupada. It is by bad associates and ill advice. So Prabhupada is saying that yes, any of us could fall into this path. Duryodhana, why is it that he went into the wrong path? Answer is given here, by bad association. And in another place, Prabhupada explains that bad association includes people like Karna, specifically named Karna, and Dushasana. So Prabhupada is naming in the purport the specific evil influences that Duryodhana had. Of course, Duryodhana was evil-minded from childhood, even before he met Karna. But particularly after he met Karna, it became worse. And by ill advice of Karna, who is sometimes people glorify Karna as a great, very saintly person who was very, Danavir, charitably disposed, etc. Of course, he may have those qualities, very chivalrous and charitably disposed. But actually, his advice was not beneficial for Duryodhana at all. A lot of people think that Duryodhana's advice was not beneficial for Karna. But according to Prabhupada's purport, Karna's advice was more harmful to Duryodhana than Duryodhana's advice was to Karna. So, by the ill advice of Karna, associates like Karna and Dushasana, Duryodhana was on the wrong path. And as a result, he had to be punished. So when we take to this path, that what we are on, we have to really introspect and see what association is leading to our actions and decisions and inclinations. And if those associations and advice that we are taking, the counsel that we are taking, which is often the counsel that is in line with our desires that we already have, it just amplifies what we want anyway, which is almost always never in accordance to the plan of the Lord, then it's only going to take us to the wrong path. And then we are wondering, why are we being punished? We are wondering, why are we suffering? The suffering is happening, the answer is given here. And the suffering is not something that pleases the Lord at all. So every time we are taking counsel and every time we are taking upon a course of action which is guided by such ill counsel, we are actually displeasing the Lord. Not simply because of our immediate offenses that we commit, but because it is forcing the Lord to punish us. And punishing us is not something that he wants to do. Even someone like Duryodhana, who has troubled the Pandavas, his pure devotees, so much, when such Duryodhana is being punished, the Lord is not pleased. So the reflection from here is, we are thinking that we are acting as per the wishes of the Lord. We are thinking. But in the process of doing so, in the process of leading our day-to-day life, we are taking so much advice and counsel from the persons who are not really abiding by the instructions of the Lord. And that's forcing us to get punished. And that act of accepting the punishment is actually displeasing to the Lord. The act of disobeying his orders is displeasing. But more than that, he is displeased because now he is forced to punish us. So that is the special significance of disobeying the orders of the Lord and being on the wrong side. Now let's look at, if I want to be aligned with the wishes of the Lord, if I want to be obedient, and if I want to be on the right side, then one may think that I need to understand what is the real plan of the Lord. But that is not necessarily the process. Because understanding of the plan is something that's nearly impossible. And let us see what Krishna has to say about this. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, Na me viduhu suraganaha prabhavam na maharishayah aham adirna devanam maharishinam cha sarvashah. So these are verses that are spoken just before he speaks the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita, 4 verses. Krishna is saying, Na me viduhu suraganaha. That is, neither the great sages, nor, that's Maharishaya, Prabhavam na Maharishaya is great sages, Na me viduhu suraganaha, that is Devatas. Neither the hosts of demigods, nor the great sages know my origin or opulences. Prabhavam. Na me viduhu prabhavam. Prabhavam is opulences. Aham adirhi devanam. How can they know? Because I am the source of these demigods. So there is no way for them to know. For example, who is our source, immediate cause? Our parents. Right? We were born to our parents. So, if you wanted to know how you came about, how did my birth happen, how can we know? Because our parents existed before us and they gave birth to us. Only way we can know is if our parents tell us that, oh, this is how you were born. Look, here is a photograph of you coming out of the hospital. This is whatever, right? So that kind of, if we are told about that, then only we come to know. There is no other way for us to know, because that existed before our time. Oftentimes, I think at least youngsters here would have this experience at your home. There will be some objects which predate your existence, right? Are there things in your house which were there before you came? There will be some fabric, some sari, or some jeans that your father wears, or some table, or something, a cup, a spoon. They all existed before you were born. And you would wonder, when was there? This has always been there since I have been here, it has been here. But then if you ask your parents, they will tell a story. Oh no, we had gone to that shop at that time. That time you were not born. It was before your time. So, we have no idea about events that happened before our existence. These demigods, the great sages, there is a source for them. And that source is Krishna. So how is it possible for these demigods to know about Krishna? Because Krishna was there before the Devatas came into existence. And the purport, Prabhupada says, even the demigods and great sages have tried to understand Krishna by their mental speculation, and they have failed to do so. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, also, it is clearly said that even the great demigods are not able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They can speculate to the limits of their imperfect senses and can reach the opposite conclusion of impersonalism. Or they can imagine something by mental speculation, but it is not possible to understand Krishna by such foolish speculation. So even demigods, according to this, they can speculate, and they do often speculate. why this is happening. Because with our own puny intelligence, we are always trying to figure out things, why something is happening, we're trying to reason things. Then imagine the position of demigods who are much more powerful than we are, much more bigger span of vision. They can see the workings of the universe, they control various aspects. Somebody controls the wind, somebody controls the light, somebody is controlling the weather, somebody is controlling various faculties, senses, somebody is controlling the movement of the eyes, somebody is controlling speech. All these great demigods who can control these various faculties in the universe, would they not be trying to figure out what's happening? They do. They try to figure out, but they fail. They're not able to. So let's look at these two categories that have been mentioned. Great sages who have been bewildered and demigods who have been bewildered. So there are some references, and in this purport of 10.2, there is reference to Bhagavatam. So in Bhagavatam also it is mentioned, Prabhupada is saying. Right? So let us look at this Bhagavatam to see what two instances, one instance of sage and one instance of demigod. So we have time for that much. So there is this verse in Bhagavad Gita, which we should look at it just briefly before we go to the example of the sages who are bewildered. Krishna is saying, "Na me parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. Na me parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani." So Krishna is describing in 3rd chapter, where he's talking about karma yoga, he describes what are the various activities, prescribed duties for people in general. And then he says, but for me, there are no prescribed duties. Na me partha asti, partha is Arjuna, asti, exist, kartavyam, duties, in all the 3 worlds, trishu lokeshu, there are no duties prescribed for me. Nana avaptam avaptavyam, nana avaptam, that is neither do I have any wants or shortcomings. Avaptam, aptam is to obtain. But if I have not obtained something, that means I want something. So I have there is nothing that I am short of. And because I have no shortage of anything, therefore I also don't want anything. If you consider our activities and our prescribed duties, they are all aligned with what we want. We all want to have a family, and therefore there are prescribed duties relating to family. We all want a society, and therefore there are prescribed duties relating to a society. But what about Krishna? He has no shortcoming. It is not that he must live in a cul-de-sac with other Indians who can maybe take care of the children when they are not free. Nothing like that. They have no such desire. He has no such shortcoming, therefore he is not dependent on anyone, therefore there is no prescribed duty. So let us just understand this one part and then we'll get to this. O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the 3 planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So you see this contradiction here, apparent contradiction. And yet Krishna appears to be engaged in prescribed duties, although he has no need. So this is something that is very bewildering, and Uddhava asks Krishna about this. But before that, there is this wonderful verse that's quoted in the purport of this 3rd chapter, 22nd verse. Prabhupada is quoting this verse from Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Tam ishwaranam paramam maheshwaram tam devatanam paramam cha daivatam patim patinam paramam parastad vidama devam bhuvaneshu midhyam natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate natat samashabhyadhikascha drishyate parashya shaktir vividhaiva shruyate swabhaviki jnana balakriya cha. So Krishna's energy, they are working automatically. Swabhaviki jnana balakriya cha. That means he has created a mechanism by which he does not need to personally do anything. Automatically the energies are working. If I take this and put it down, it will fall down. It is Krishna's energy, Krishna's plan, Krishna's mechanism, but he has automated it so that it's working on its own, so that he doesn't necessarily have to do anything personally. unless he chooses to. Parasya Shakti. And he has got varieties of energies. Parasya Shakti Vividhaiva Struyate. So this verse from Shvetashvatara Upanishad is also confirming what we just read. So I'll just skip past this, but the main point here is that although he is the controller of everything, he has no specific duty by himself. And all the entities are delegated with particular power only by the Lord. And they're not supreme on their own. So in spite of having these such a mechanism by which the universe is seeming to work on its own, and Krishna has nothing to do, yet he does so many things. And so Uddhava is asking Krishna for clarification. So let's see this verse. Uddhava is asking Krishna, is praying to Krishna, Karmani anihasya bhavo bhavasyate durgashtrayo atharya bhayat palayanam kalatmano yat pramadayutashrama swatman rate khidyati dhirvidam idaha. My Lord, even the learned sages become disturbed in their intelligence when they see that your greatness engages in fruitive work, although you're free from all desires, that you take birth, although you're unborn, that you flee out of fear of the enemy and take shelter in a fort, although you're the controller of invincible time, and that you enjoy householder life, surrounded by many women, although you enjoy in yourself. This is bewildering to the sages. How is it that Krishna, who is completely transcendental and who has no duties, is living in Dwaraka as a householder, and he has so many wives, and so they become bewildered by this, and they say Krishna is also having prescribed duties. Look how he is doing. Look how he is executing all the sacrifices, just like a householder should do. Therefore, even God is bound by the laws of nature. Nobody is free. This is the conclusion that many sages come to. Many philosophers, they come to this kind of conclusion because they get bewildered. They don't understand Krishna's transcendental position. Why he is doing this? Why is he enacting the role of an ideal householder? They don't know. They cannot figure out. The sages get bewildered. The purport, Prabhupada is saying, the solution means solution to the bewilderment, how to avoid the bewilderment. The solution is that the Lord has nothing to do with anything mundane. All his activities are transcendental. This cannot be understood by the mundane speculators. For the mundane speculators, there is certainly a kind of bewilderment. But for the transcendental devotees, there is nothing astonishing in this. The Brahman conception of the absolute truth is certainly the negation of all mundane activities. So this is a secret that Prabhupada is revealing here. Actually, this is a very, very deep secret. So I would just like you to pay attention to this sentence. The Brahman conception of the absolute truth is certainly the negation of all mundane activities. So if somebody were to understand that there is all-pervading impersonal Brahman, all-pervading consciousness that pervades his entire manifestation, that is Brahman conception. And in that Brahman conception, there is negation of mundane activities. The moment you understand that there's all-pervading consciousness, there's all-pervading Brahman, then there's no impetus to undertake any mundane activities, which means any material activities. That is true. But the Parabrahman conception is full with transcendental activities. The Parabrahman conception is full with transcendental activities. So this Parabrahman conception, or the conception of Krishna as a person, that conception is what makes a person understand that there are transcendental activities. And until a person comes to the stage of Parabrahman understanding, they will be bewildered by Krishna's activities. They will think that it is a mundane activity. One who knows the distinctions between the conception of Brahman and the conception of Supreme Brahman is certainly the real transcendentalist. There is no bewilderment for such transcendentalist. So you can see that among sages, it is not that everybody understands that Krishna is a person, that the supreme absolute truth is a person, and that person is fully transcendental. And because supreme absolute truth is a person, therefore there are activities on the transcendental platform. Any person has activities. We have activities. Krishna is a person, he also has activities. But what's the difference? Our activities are on the material platform, and Krishna's activities are on the transcendental platform. So now, further in the purport, Prabhupada is then quoting this verse that we are studying today. Nahi asya karhichit rajan. So the right explanation of Lord's activities is given by grandfather Bhishma. Prabhupada is saying. Just see how he's linking different verses from Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Nahi asya karhichit rajan puman veda viditsitam yad vigyashaya yukta muhyanti kavayo api. Great sages are bewildered. So now let us look at demigods being bewildered. There is a incident in Bhagavatam in which there is a person who gets misled or who gets carried away by who is a pious person, but at some point in time he gets carried away by a lusty interaction between a man and a woman, between a prostitute and a man. And when he does that, he becomes degraded, he becomes fallen down, and towards the end of his life, by a miraculous utterance of the word Narayana, something very strange happens. So you might have all heard about this incident in Bhagavatam, and the person that I'm talking about is Ajamila. When Ajamila was on his deathbed, and in the final moment, out of his deep affection for his youngest son, who he has named Narayana, he calls out to that youngest son when he sees the scary looking Yamadutas, the messengers of death, of Yamaraj. And when they come and they're coming to take him, he immediately calls out to his son, Narayana. And I hope anyone who was slightly asleep was woken up. So similarly, he was also woken up from, we can say, slumber, because unknowingly he has taken the name of Narayana. And as soon as he says Narayana, the Vishnu Dutas arrive there. And they say, no, this person is now under our jurisdiction. And Yamadutas have already cast their ropes to catch him and take him away. And Vishnu Dutas cut the rope. And then there is a discussion between them. And the Yamadutas are defeated. They go back and they're asking Yamaraj, what happened here? We thought we are enforcing the law that you are giving, and we thought that you are the master of everything. You are the big boss here. It looks like there are other bosses also here. Something is going on. We don't understand what's going on. Can you please explain? So then Yamaraj says, yes, you have been thinking that I am the boss, but actually it's not so. Yamo vacha paro madanyo jagatas tashtusascha otam protam pratavad yatra vishvam yad amshato asya sthiti janmanasha nasi otavad asya vashe chalokaha. You are thinking that I am the supreme, but actually it is not. There is a fabric in this universe, and this fabric consists of, all of you have heard of space-time fabric, the fabric of space-time. So now gradually scientists are beginning to understand that there is a fabric in this universe. The entire space-time is a fabric. But this is already known to Yamaraj. This ordinary information for scientists takes many, many decades to find out, but Yamaraj already knows that. There's a fabric of this universe, a fabric of Otam and Protam. Otam and Protam, Prabhu has described many times. These are threads that are going horizontally and vertically in a fabric. If you're going to weave a cloth like this dhoti, it has got, if you see, there are two kinds of threads, right? They are crisscrossing. There are threads that go like this and threads that go like that. Otam and Protam. This Otam and Protam, just as the threads, fabric is woven by Otam and Protam, there is a Otam and Protam of this universe. And that Otam and Protam is actually the supreme controller, not me. That's what Yamadharmaraj is saying. In fact, there is a quotation from another Vedic literature where one of the names of Lord, the Supreme Lord, is given as Otam Protam. But first let me just give the translation. Yamaraja said, my dear servants, you have accepted me as the Supreme, but factually I am not. Above me and above all the other demigods, including Indra and Chandra, is the one supreme master and controller. The partial manifestations of his personality are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are in charge of creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this universe. He is like the two threads that form the length and breadth of a woven cloth. The entire world is controlled by him, just as a bull is controlled by a rope in its nose. So Yamaraj is first of all establishing the supremacy of one supreme controller who is controlling the entire universe. And then there's a quotation from Skanda Purana in the purport Prabhupada is giving. Like the two threads, horizontal and vertical, of which a quilt is manufactured, Lord Vishnu is situated as the vertical and horizontal cause of the cosmic manifestation. So Lord Vishnu is the cause of the cosmic manifestation in the form of the fabric of this entire cosmic manifestation. So then Yamadharmaraj, if you look at this verse, it continues. Let me just read the translation in the interest of time. Just as the driver of a bullock cart ties rope through the nostrils of his bulls to control them, the Supreme Personality of Godhead binds all men through the ropes of his words in the Vedas, which set forth the names and activities of the distinct orders of human society, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. In fear, the members of these orders all worship the Supreme Lord by offering him presentations according to the respective activities. So the Supreme Lord has bound all the living entities through the Varnashrama Dharma, through the orders of the human society, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And as the persons are conforming to the Varnashrama, they are obedient to the laws of Varnashrama, then they stay in line. But otherwise, if they become disobedient, then they are given resultant reactions to their disobedience. So our obedience and what is right and what is wrong, for sure is controlled through the Varnashrama. And he's saying that Lord is controlling just as a bull is controlled in a field. If you want the bull to go in a particular direction, how many of you have driven a bullock cart? You've driven. You're there in the bull. You're there in the cart. You're a passenger. You're a passenger or a controlling? Just a passenger. Madhav seems to be raising. You controlled the bull? Controlled it, okay. You're done. You're given the opportunity to pull the rope, okay. So, you've also done, Mataji? Bull rope, yeah. So if you want the bull to go in a certain direction, then you have to pull the rope accordingly. Once I have also done, accidentally. I was a small boy, and there was a bullock cart, and I just went and stood on the bullock cart, and there was a rope, and there was a bull tied, and I just touched the rope, picked it up, and something happened, the bull started moving forward. I didn't know what to do now. I'm on the cart, the bull is moving forward, I had no clue how to control the bull. But fortunately, it was going very slowly. I think the bull knew that I had no idea what I was doing. So I just jumped off the cart. But basically, if you want the bull to go in a certain direction, that is guided through the rope. And in our case, the Lord has laid down the Varnashrama Dharma and the rules of what we should be obedient to. And one of the basic rules, of course, is that the householder is the only one that is earning. And all the brahmacharis in the other three ashramas, brahmachari and vanaprastha and the sannyasi, they are being supported by the householders. So the householder's duty is support the other three varnas. So one who is obedient to these rules of Varnashrama Dharma, they are obedient to the laws of nature, laws of the Lord. But the moment we go cross it, then we'll start seeing the resultant reaction. And now comes the main part about the bewilderment of the demigods, and we will stop with this. Yamaraja is saying about himself, I, Yamaraja, Indra, the king of heaven, Nirrati, Varuna, Chandra, the moon god, Agni, Lord Shiva, Pavana, that is wind god, Lord Brahma, Surya, the sun god, Vishwasu, the 8 Vasus, the Sadhyas, the Maruts, the Rudras, the Siddhas, the Marichi, and the other great rishis engaged in maintaining the departmental affairs of the universe, as well as the best of demigods headed by Brihaspati, the great sages headed by Bhrigu, are all certainly freed from the influence of the two base modes, material modes of nature, namely passion and ignorance. Nevertheless, although we are in the mode of goodness, we cannot understand the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What then is to be said of others who, under illusion, merely speculate to know God? So, in the purport here, Prabhupada is saying that all of us are actually bound by the Lord. In the previous verse, it was mentioned that we are bound by the Lord through the Varnashrama Dharma. Right? Atapumbir Dujashreshta Varnashrama Vibhagashaha Samstutasya Dharmasya Samshiddhir Haritoshanam. Varnashrama Dharma means it must be followed with the aim to please Hari, Haritoshanam. And here, Prabhupada says in the purports that we are also bound by the modes of material nature, by the three gunas, because they are always acting on us. Sattva guna, tamo guna, rajo guna. Mostly the influence of rajo and tamas. That's what is acting on us. Even if we were freed from the influence of the two lower modes, the rajas and tamas, if somebody were to rise up to sattva guna, which is all the devatas, they are all controlled by sattva guna. Even they are not free from the mode of nature. And because they are controlled by the modes of nature, by the gunas, even though it's a sattva guna, they cannot understand the plan of the Lord at all. They cannot understand the Lord. So anyone who is bound by the modes of nature cannot understand. So what is the solution to that? That Krishna says how one can know him. Mam chavyo abhyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. If a person becomes a pure devotee, if a person takes to the path of devotional service, then they can become freed from the modes of material nature. Sagunan samatityaitan. One can transcend the modes of material nature. Only by transcending the modes of material nature, one can understand Krishna. But of course, even then, one cannot understand Krishna fully. One can never understand Krishna fully. And there is a place in the purport of course, this is mentioned multiple places, but where I saw recently is in the purport of a verse in 10th canto, where there is a quotation from Sanatana Goswami. The verse itself is, of course, saying that even if a person were to count all the atoms on earth, even if a person were to count all the molecules of light coming from the luminaries, all the stars, even if a person were to count all the molecules of ice, not exact order, atoms of earth, atoms of ice, molecules of light coming from all the stars, if somebody were to count that, they still cannot understand the glories of the Lord, which are limitless. And in that verse, in the purport of that verse, there is a quotation from Sanatana Goswami where he says that actually Anantasesha has counted. He has already counted the atoms of the earth. He has already counted the atoms in the ice. He has already counted all the molecules of light that are coming from all the luminaries. But he is still not able to fathom the limitless glories of the Lord. So where is the question of us or anyone ordinary trying to understand the plan of the Lord? The path before us, which will be explained in the next verse, next week, you'll all hear, is what should we do therefore? And in today's verse, Prabhupada is saying, therefore, one must simply abide by the orders of the Lord. We have to understand the orders of the Lord and abide by that. So what does that mean and what exactly does it mean, we'll see again more next week. So I'll stop here and see if you have any questions, comments. Hare Krishna Prabhu. I'm sorry, even if you're surrounded by sages and you are doing service of the Lord. Okay. This. The question is that even if you're surrounded by great sages and you're engaged in service of the Lord, the mind is always rebelling and is asking you to do something different because the mind is thinking that you're not engaged in devotional service or it's not very important. So, how to control the mind? The answer is not associated with great sages, but associated with pure devotees. So, the sages, if you see here, they are bewildered. Sages are not the people whom we seek association from. Great sages is a broad term that refers to many types of individuals who are following varieties of paths. Great sages includes pure devotees or aspiring devotees, like Maitreya Rishi is considered a great sage, and he met the Supreme Lord, and that is not, although it says by accident, and immediately in the purport it says, no, it's not by accident. Meeting the Lord cannot happen by accident. So great sages like Maitreya Rishi are certainly devotees. But there are also many other philosophers and other sages who are not on the Parabrahman conception. So their association will not help us. But when we are associating with a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, then automatically the mind gets controlled. When we are associating with, when we say that the mind is pulling me in other direction, that means the mind is impure. The impure mind is the greatest enemy, whereas purified mind is the greatest friend. So the mind, just like in the Bhagavad Gita, there is example of all the different senses that are pulling us in different directions. Above the mind, there is intelligence. And above the intelligence, there is the I, the real me. So the question is, you have to show who's the boss. This is your mind, or you are the mind's soul? Who is the person in charge of this mind-body system? I am the person who the mind should be listening to, not that I am listening to the mind. But we have been so conditioned to give in to the demands of our minds for millions of lifetimes after lifetime after lifetime, that we have given this extraordinary power to our mind to dictate terms to us. And now we are helpless. We're helpless. It is just like a small child, right? Let's say there's a 2-year-old child. And the child is not given the distinction of what is good behavior and what is bad behavior. And the child is never disciplined. So what will happen? The child grows up 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. When the child is now 18 years of age, will you be able to listen? The child will listen to you? Will the child listen to you? Child won't listen. And then you're wondering, oh, this child is not listening to me. Why would it listen? You're not trained from childhood. For millions of lifetimes, we have allowed our mind to be vagabond, vagrant, do whatever it pleases. And we have suffered all the consequences. And now, by the mercy of pure devotees and Vaishnavas, we have a hope of training the mind. It will take a little bit of time. And how we train it is by training. Nobody has to teach you how to raise a child. You know how to discipline the child. So mind is like that. Very, very, very undisciplined child. Needs to be beaten up. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, every day in the morning you wake up and beat the mind with a shoe, with a chappal. Shoe is a little bit dignified. 100 times. Remember, Mukund might remember this Upakyane, Upadesha, the small books that we have. There is small books which have this Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati quotes. And in one of them, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says this: beat your mind every day with 100 times with a shoe. Just beat it into submission. Don't beat your child like that. He'll go to jail. But the mind should be beaten up. What does it mean? It means just refusing to yield. It's like a tug of war. Sometimes in a tug of war, you need to have some allies, right? If you're alone on one side, and the other side you have powerful people. All these WPI graduates, they're all on one side. Very strong. Look at this Siddharth and Dinesh and Shaurya are all pulling on one side. And the other side you have got Madhav. What will happen? It is unmatched. You are going to lose. So you need one person on your side, and that is pure devotee. The moment we associate with pure devotee, and how do we associate with pure devotee? It is through the instructions of the Vaishnavas who are following his instructions, right? They have one tug of wars before. They are fighting stronger. In the association, they're living together. Together, we can do this. So if we are associating with devotees, then this won't happen. But we are not always associating with devotees. The result of association of so many people in the past is still with us. That's how the mind is able to attack us. Any other questions? Yes, Prabhu.
There is a there is a sentence in the purport that the Lord is constrained to award punishment to wrongdoer. So the Lord is constrained. So uh, how can we understand this? Like, is Lord constrained by something?
No, no. Lord is not constrained by anything. Lord is not constrained in that sense. He's not bound by the constraint. But he does that because that's the system he has to establish and bring us in line. It's just like a example of the errant child, right? If the child is not behaving well, a father is constrained to punish the child. But is the father really constrained? No. Father can say, no, do whatever you want. I don't care. Go put all junk in your mouth. Whatever junk you see in the house, put it in your mouth. Here is shoe polish. Here, eat. He can say like that. Right? But will the father say like that? No. He is constrained by the love he has for the child. It is a love for the living entity which is constraining the Lord to act in his welfare and go to extraordinary lengths to act in his welfare.
Prabhu, thank you for the lecture. My question is, how do we follow the orders of the Lord willingly?
That's a great question for next week. So I'll just hold on to the thought and come prepared with that, contemplate on that, and come to the next week's class, and then you'll hear about what is the best way to actually follow the order, and you'll hear more about it. It's a great question. Today's class is please follow the order. How to follow, we'll see in future. We'll stop here.